you really need focus to put a thread in between the eye of a needle. But as soon as you get it through the eye of the needle and you could pull it, you can do whatever you need with it. And I think there's a point for just about every business to go through the eye of the needle. And then after that, there can be some really smart ways of expansion and growth and different rev lines. But there's initially a real point of focus.
Matt, thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you more. Think Like an Owner is a podcast all about how ambitious business owners grow companies. And we were just talking on your show about the different things you've done in your business, and things I think about with the podcast and whatnot. And it's a Craft Your Life radio show. That's the name of your podcast and show. Like, what got you into that? How did you start that? And what kind of prompted you to start podcasting? Every podcaster is kind of a unique origin story for why they created their show. And I'm fascinated what yours is.
Yeah. There's really two pieces. The first one is out of necessity. I started Kooler Garage Doors up in a small cow town called Gunnison, Colorado. And a number of years ago, we had a gentleman that I was super loyal to. He moved a couple hours away into Grand Junction, which we're now in, and this is our sole market currently. But during that time, I recognized that in building Kooler within Gunnison, I had easy access. I was there. I was entrenched in that community. People knew me, but I also knew who were the influence, I call them bell cows, who are the influencers in town, not social media influencers, just the folks that kind of led town and knew people. And if I go meet certain people, then all of a sudden I'm included in a broader community. And so when we moved into Grand Junction, I utilized the podcast initially to make those connections. So if you see episode 1, 2, 3, 4, I mean, it's the chamber director, it's, different people that were in leadership roles or influential roles. And I was trying to find people that were essentially bell cows. And then it just formed into, and it evolved in the sense that, I now hunt what it takes to really craft. And I love the idea of craft and craftsmanship and its intention and attention. So it's taken a life of its own. It's still very much a networking tool, but out of the gate, it was literally to build relationships in a new market.
Yeah, similar to the reason I started Think Like an Owner was to meet business owners, and I didn't really have unless I was just going to cold email everyone and try to have a couple of minute conversation with all these different people. It's kind of harder to break in, but a podcast, as you've clearly found out, is a really unique way of introducing yourself and meeting somebody that they probably don't hear every day and don't get a lot of. So it's definitely a competitive advantage personally you can develop too.
Without a doubt, I think of it as a win-win. I mean, when it's done right, everybody loves talking about themselves to a degree, and to have somebody that's curious and being like, "Oh man, I've already been so inspired by you. I'd love to chat some more." Be like, "What? All right."
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
What other stuff do you craft or work on?
Myself? Almost everything. And what I mean by that is, again, I would boil down craft to intention and attention. And as I get more and more maturity, I am looking to craft all aspects of my life. Like, I want to be very attentive and intentive to the relationship I have with my wife. I want to be very intentive and attentive to the relationship I have with my kids, with my spirit, with my health, with my business. Business these days has grown to the point, and in part it's just a bunch of gratitude, but it's also an honor to be able to lead others and help them craft lives. And that's really important to me. Like, I look for people that want to go somewhere, and I don't just have a job for people. Like, it's a little different. And I think that's really important. So, other realms of, like, I craft my hobby. I'm getting more into juggling again and cycling and RC airplane piloting and, that kind of stuff will continue.
I'm a huge aviation geek. I have a uncle
Nice.
who I think he's still into it, but he was for as long as I can remember, he was really into RC planes, and he had even the gas ones. Like he'd fill up
Yeah.
this tiny little gerbil sized gas tank with fuel, and then it was loud. It had exhaust, and it was
Yeah.
about the size of an office table or office desk. And he'd fly it around. I got to fly it a little bit. I didn't crash, thankfully, because I feel terrible. I'll crash my own plane, but I feel
Yeah.
bad crashing someone else's.
Yeah. I grew up and never crossed the threshold of gas airplanes, but never got into airplanes growing up. I stayed in cars and we would race them all around. And then when my boy was old enough, we got into airplanes and these days the barrier is low. You could buy a whole kit for a couple $100 and go figure it out because it's all electric. And so one day I will get into the gas because I see these guys rolling up with big trailers and big planes. I'm like, ooh, that looks cool.
Yeah, so some people spend a lot of time on them. They try to make a
Oh yeah.
replica 737 or 747 or Concorde or something. They clearly spend a ton of time like custom building it themselves, and they're really handy. And yeah, it's impressive. There's also the entry level, like which what I had, which was the kind of $50-$60 indoor helicopter with the
Yeah.
two blades, and you had a little like remote control. You can land it on like coffee tables and like fly it around the house. That was always really fun. Those didn't last long. They crashed, but they were a ton of fun.
Yeah. That's fun.
And so, how did you get into garage doors? What's the thread between cars and garage doors for you?
I don't know if I don't know if there's a real thread there. This company I say started by mistake. I didn't have a plan to get into the trades. I didn't have a plan. I never thought of myself as a tradesman. And so my background really is in education and nonprofit leadership. And out of school, I was a guide and I would take kids and adults out backpacking, kayaking, rock climbing, you name it. And we would teach life. And I always loved that. Once I found that, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. We can go have an experience and we could talk about and reflect on that experience and actually learn some real stuff. That's cool. And that brought me around into a lot of different places, but it ultimately got me into drug prevention, which is a weird little side tangent into that realm because I started working with mentoring and that just is a preventative piece. And so in 2012 in Colorado, we legalized weed. And right at that time, I got the job to be the director of Gunnison County's Substance Abuse Prevention Project. And I ran that for 2 years, and I was really charged with bringing in funding. So got the job. I love to go achieve. And I went out and achieved $1 million in grants. I figured out how to write grants and net some money for this organization. And after that, I just didn't have another thing to achieve. And I definitely was not built to be a county employee. And so I left, young babies at home, didn't really have a plan, didn't have a net to jump. I just knew I could not stay at the county. I just was not going to be a mentally well human being. And I left. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. But I started an entity, Community Thrive, and that was going to join in education and the newly forming cannabis industry. And I didn't have a revenue generator. So 3 months in, I'm about to go broke. And a buddy of mine just offers me $20 an hour to paint out walls of a spec house. So I'm painting walls, learning how to roll paint onto walls, learning how to make cut lines at the ceiling. And all of it is kind of feeling good. Like I feel a sense of accomplishment. And it's at that time I hear through the grapevine an old landlord of ours where where my first kid was born. She was looking to get somebody to paint her house, but couldn't get anybody to call her back. And at that time, I was so desperate. I was like, I can call her back. let's do this. And so I cut a deal. I didn't have a dime. And I cut a deal, shook a deal on an $8,500 paint project. And I just went to work figuring it out. I was like, all right, what do I need to know? What, I did some of the prep work to find the number and took $2,000 of a deposit, bought a pump, got my LLC, got a $5 logo. The company name came off the back of a hockey jersey, and I was off and running. I hired a guy at 25 bucks an hour to come on site and use my pump sprayer because I didn't know how to use it. But after a day of watching him, I figured it out. And so the next day I'm moving around and we get the house done. But that's where it started.
So you're painting the house. Eventually, she must have asked you about the garage door, right, or something.
She did not. So I'm painting the house and figuring out how to market. So I get the next house lined up and the next house, and I'm building a small crew of college kids at the same time. So I'm figuring a lot of stuff out during that time. And I know that exterior seasons in the mountains are going to be short. So I'm like, all right, what's going to happen through the winter? And I went after garage doors because I had a stint of being an installer for a company that was no longer in town. So I knew the niche was going to be there. And I was like, all right, now instead of cooler painting, it's cooler painting indoors. Let's go do that.
The
And
perfect combination of businesses.
yeah, it's perfect combo. It actually was really good for a moment. I had both of them and we built it. We were a 7-figure company within a couple of years in a county of 18,000 people. And it was all because of the two of them. I'm running basically two businesses in one. And I was fortunate to have a really good individual who would run the painting. So I could sell it. I would sell the doors. I would sell the painting. He would execute it with a crew and I would execute on the doors. And then we got to a point of growth where they became like two siblings and they just started arguing with each other and battling. And then instead of like hearing any of the signals and being smart, I chose to keep adding. And so we got into epoxy flooring, we got into garage storage cabinetry, and we got into different levels of painting. We went into really high end custom homes and started painting cabinets in places where I should never have been. We made some very costly mistakes, always made it right, but it took me a minute to learn the art of focus. And this individual that was running the paint projects at one point and all of that, he left. Once he left, it really got messy, but we got through that and now we focus and now we know what our wheelhouse is.
Did the storage and epoxy floors work better with garage versus painting? Did you do those today?
Yeah, I would go. I would flirt with the idea of storage. I always flirt with that. I'd be cabinetry and racks, and I'm working with a manufacturer right now for a motorized ceiling rack that I think would just crush. And there's a very similar delivery system with the idea of you're selling a piece of equipment, whether it's a cabinet, a rack, or a garage door, and then you have a installation system that gets it in. So there's some similarities there. I would add that we have a current ceiling rack storage, but to go the realm of garage customization is another animal. And these days I'm just very, I don't know if gun shy is the word. I think it's smart. I think it's just focused.
Yeah. The flooring is interesting and storage is interesting because you're already there. You're already in the
Right.
garage. Is there a market for like spring cleaning? Like we'll come by once a year and like Marie Kondo your garage and put things back in order and
There
sweep
could
and
be. There could be.
yeah.
Epoxy is a wild animal. Like that is an animal in and of itself. And I know there's folks that do it really well. I never locked in. I never figured out the right SOPs or something to it. I think there is a garage cleaning Marie Kondo style, like editing. Let's help you do that for the right customer. Yeah, it could all be there, but the magnitude of complexity that happens when you add one line of revenue is more than one. And it has to be something really thought through and like carefully done.
What complexity maybe did you see removed when you stopped painting? Like walk me through like a day in your life before and after that change.
Oh man, you're bringing up some PTSD. You know, so I've always ran the team as, assuming that, there's really good people that want to go somewhere and do something that is beneficial for them in their lives. And there are some amazingly crafted craftsmen and women who are in the coatings business. The painter on an entry level area can be there's a low barrier to entry, and you can attract a different type of person that has addictions and addictive behaviors, and maybe some of those are unhealthy. And so when I was just recruiting people, be like, oh, you've got a pulse and you can shake a hand, let's go. Like we had a team of 20 at one point, and most of them were painters. The variability of humans in general, and then you bring a number of humans into a not really well organized organization, and then you bring different standards of humans into an organization that have yet to really define standards. There's all sorts of stuff that could happen, and it was just running around being a fighter and tamping out stuff like nonstop. These days, like it's almost so easy it's boring in a real way. Like I've got really tight SOPs. People know what they need to do. They show up on time. We have up leveled culture. And so we have really great humans that live really great standards that want to go somewhere and deliver a true craftsmanship style experience. So a lot of the issues that we've dealt with are gone, but I've had painters go in the wrong house and paint. I've had all sorts of stuff. We've had to do airport hangar floors, like redo stuff. Like it's just I could go on and on with paint. Lots of mistakes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Worst I've heard was someone like they built a house on like the wrong lot or
Oh
something like that,
goodness.
which sounds just like a nuclear problem to solve. That
That's pretty big. Yeah. I mean, when my paint crew went into the wrong house, we had to replace window sashes, but that was the extent of it.
wow, yeah, that that gets really painful. I can see how I'm just thinking through like all the different ways that your life got better and was totally different when you focused on garage doors. Like what do you feel like became possible when you focused on garage doors? Like what opened up for you?
Well, a lot. When I look back, I'm like, yeah, even if I had just been like fine being an exterior painter and just painting for 4 or 5 months while I could, I would have been earning probably more money than I did trying to scale up something and put in a bunch of multiple revenue lines. And, we ended up getting rid of paint. I was going to close up paint right at 2020, and then all that weirdness. I was like, all right, we'll keep it just because I don't know what's going to happen. And ran it for another 2 years, which I was just I was just procrastinating the shift because we talked earlier about identity shift, and I was just attached to paint and this idea of potential revenue. But the art of focus actually opens up opportunity to more revenue, which is weird because I'm like, oh, I don't want to give up. At that point, we were running 700K in paint. And I was like, that's significant revenue just to be like, oh, I'm done. But as soon as I'm done with that, like it can open up more opportunities in a different line that's more focused and that I actually enjoy more. And so it just, the idea of scarcity, and I think that's what I built the company on, was scarcity at first, and working through, whatever I needed to work on in that journey to get through it and just be like, okay, we've got a new level of maturity here. But in letting that go and really focusing, I look at it as like the eye of a needle. You really need focus to put a thread in between the eye of a needle. But as soon as you get it through the eye of the needle and you can pull it, you can do whatever you need with it. And I think there's a point for just about every business to go through the eye of the needle. And then after that, there can be some really smart ways of expansion and growth and different rev lines. But there's initially a real point of focus. And it wasn't until recently because, in our journey, we got rid of paint. And then I meet a guy in the door industry, go to his conference. His name's Tommy Mello. A lot of people have heard about him. Like, he shows me a new school way of doing doors. And I'm like, oh, I'm all in. And so it took me a couple of years to really shift the model because I had an old school model, and we could talk about that. But as I get the new school model in a larger market, now I can just be super focused. And what that offers me is the honor of leading people. I'm not just tamping out fires. Now I actually get to coach, I get to mentor. And what's the cool thing about this is everything I loved about experiential education and guiding, I get to now do just within the confines of a garage door company. But I'm still the guide, I'm still the educator. I come in and I just do that. I'm not on the tools. I'm not putting out a bunch of fires. I've real focus on strategy. I have real focus on recruiting and just helping people um, really be better people and whatever that means to them.
It sounds almost like there were seasons of life to your business. And there was
Yeah.
the early season of doing a lot of different things, less focus. Then the early kind of time on shifting focus to be only looking at garage doors, only working on garage doors. And then this kind of like old school, new school, maybe change of season. Is that how you like, when you think back on the 10 years running the business, do those feel like the distinct seasons, or are there some others that you feel like that was a pretty big change in the company, or like this time period was really unique for some reason?
Okay. I'll answer that two ways. One, when I look at seasons, it makes me think of my kids. Cooler is just one of my kids, I think. And I recognize my kids are not me. They're not mine. I don't need to be attached to them, but I reference that as a lifespan. Like there's a bell curve. That's the life cycle of any business. And you start out as a baby and you go through like toddler phase and then teenager and then adult. And then you can get into like older adult and really old. And then you peter out. Or for business, what's fun about business is you could start the downward trend and then resurrect. You could change, you can reignite. Industries do this, businesses do this. The garage door industry was on the down slope, like the 80s, 90s. Like this industry was on the down slope. And then it resurrected and technology moved a lot of that. And it started adopting from our cousin of HVAC. But when I look at this, like my kids were little when I started Cooler. They were 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. But I'm trajectorying Cooler. It's right along with my kids in a lot of ways. Like Cooler's a teenager right now. And I have to put in the guardrails. And now it's time to put in the financial systems and just manage cash because teenagers can be all over the place. And eventually we'll get to young adults right around when my kids are young adults. Like it's crazy in that realm. So I could look back and be like, yeah, there's the baby stage, there's the toddler stage. Now we're in the teenager stage. Like that's but I could also look back and this is a testament to who I am, like my personality. Some of this is just baggage, like running immature patterns. Some of it is literally how I'm wired. Like I love change. And every year there's significant change up until last year. Like 2025 and 2026, I could lay over each other and be like, okay, here's some really comparable stuff. January to January, February to February, I can compare those, same market, same business model. Every year prior, I cannot do that. Every year prior, there was some significant change. And sometimes that was just me thinking I was needing to do something or running in a wrong direction kind of deal. But, the stability comes, as young adulthood starts coming in. Like Cooler's doing some adulting.
Are there some changes you feel like you didn't have to actually do?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
maybe,
without a
yeah.
doubt. I don't know, Alex. I don't know why, I felt like I had to make so many changes. I mean, it was almost weekly. I've got a guy that has ran with me for just about the 10 out of 10 and a half years. He's now our operations director and great individual. But talk about the amount of patience that he must have had to hang in and do his thing. And his niche has been indoors the whole time, but he saw us on the paint, he saw us in epoxy. Like I don't think I would have I definitely would not have hung out with the version I was as a leader. I just look at that and be like, dude, no way would I would deal with that. But he hung in and he's such a stud. But I would literally create change for change sakes. And part of it is just my own discomfort with success. I remember my second year, I think it was my second year, I landed a gig that was amazing. Like I was going to restain a 30 plus home HOA. And it was like $150,000 deal. We netted a lot of money on that project. I felt really uncomfortable winning that big. I gave a lot of it away. Like I could go through different archetypes. I mean, it's so fun to look at and just be like, oh man, there it is. But I would do stuff that would sabotage. I would do stuff to create change just because I felt uncomfortable starting to feel comfortable. It's weird, messed up psychology, but it was so true. So yeah, were there things that I needed or didn't need to touch and change? Without a doubt. Like I'm just learning how to do this.
What helped you shift away from that mindset? Like being
Um,
afraid when things go well.
yeah, I mean there's a lot, man. I've always done a good job of having really great mentors and really mature individuals that I look up to and get inspired by in my life. I've always gone into professional development and coaching, and that all accrues and adds up over time. I also think a little bit is having the experience to look back on and be like, yeah, all that running, all that change, all of that isn't really working. So let's try something else. Let's try maintaining. Let's try consistency and see how that goes. And we're getting there.
Did you have to set a rule for yourself? Like, okay, we're going to do this change. We're going to do it for a full month. And we're going to see, did it work? Did it suck? What needs to change now?
I've tried. You know, more some of it is learning the skill of faith and trust. And there certainly are some parameters in place. However, it's more about just getting me out of the way. And what I mean by that is bringing people up that care, that are a different personality, that are more of the mode of maintaining and keeping feet on the ground and one foot in front of the other and getting stuff done. And then for me to be you really employ that long-term patience. Like, okay, we're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. And in the entrepreneur mind, I could take a roller coaster every day. And, I'm recognizing the times where past versions of me would react and understanding that cycles, this is what cycles do. Cycles cycle. And I don't need to react. I don't need, just because we have like one down sales month does not mean I need to revamp a sales process. Doesn't mean I need to add another revenue line. Like, I'm starting to recognize the cost of change and just being okay with faith and mapping it out and being like, all right, here's the plan, and then you guys run it. So I don't just go in there and create change for change's sakes.
Yeah, I feel that sometimes too around, like, I know like certain days are often better than others. And like Monday can be sometimes a really abrupt day because all of the things you were holding off all hit on Monday, and it feels like a lot of change all at once. And then the rest of the week is usually like a much like greater improvement, or like things will throw me off, I think, faster than hopefully a version of me 10 years from now. And I think I'm learning to accept that like there's going to be a lot of bumps along the road, but it's going to be fine. Like the long term is still there, still very consistent, and still you're still on that path. But being able to handle some of the day to day, like immediate changes that make you think things are not going well, or like I need to change this, or this is going to happen again. It takes a long time to get over. I'm definitely not over that piece.
Yeah. 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 It's a skill.
Hmm. Tell me about the like, old school version that you were running. What did that Cooler Garage look like?
Yeah.
Feel like if I was a customer, what was my experience versus today?
Yeah. Yeah. You'll appreciate this because some of the legwork that you've done, you can see it all over the place. I mean, there is a disruption in the garage door industry. There is old school, there's new school. Old school is going to race to the bottom and commoditize the garage door and chase builders. And old school is going to go straight for GCs and do stuff as cheaply as possible and just slam jam it in. And then if they have the capacity to run service for homeowners, they come in, they do band-aid repairs, and they get out. There's no relationship. There's no craftsmanship. There's, in fact, a lot of sloppiness. There is an underregulated industry for garage doors. Like, there is no real, like, there is a real certification, but there's no license needed in most places. Like, it's underregulated. So you get anybody. You get people with addictions, with weird backgrounds, moving through garage door spaces and slapping things. That's old school. So when I ran old school, I chased builders, and it became a pricing war for the most part. And then a homeowner, we'd run in and swap out something, but I certainly wasn't assessing the full system. I wasn't looking long term. I wasn't even asking what the homeowner really wanted. I wasn't given options. I was just making things work again. And of course, as a tech, like, I can make anything work. Of course, we'll do this weird band aid thing because I'm creative and I can problem solve. New school is what I would call a home service model, and it's all about serving the homeowner. So we work with a few builders, but I don't chase builders, and I certainly don't price match. And I'm talking only to homeowners, and we're talking about long-term value. We're talking about security. We're talking about peace of mind. I'm giving options. I'm running what we call the motorized door analysis. Like, we have a in-depth process, because if something happens on a door, it's usually not the thing that's really wrong. There's something underlying it. So I was just at a customer yesterday, did a ride along. I'm out with my guy Cesar. We get to this house, and the operator where it attaches to the garage door pulled out. And so it pulled the panel apart a little bit. And that was the complaint. Like, this thing's dangling. I don't trust it anymore. I just need you guys to put it back on. Old school would come in and be like, oh, no problem. And we would put like a operator reinforcement bracket in there and get it slung up, run the operator, be good to go. But that doesn't alleviate the problem. The real problem was that whoever installed that just a few years ago used the wrong springs. And the way we found that is, well, we weigh the door with a scale and we note that there's 55 pounds of force sitting on the concrete. So when the door's closed, a normal counterbalanced door should be like 5 pounds on the floor. It shouldn't have this 50-pound. Like, this is a guillotine unsafe scenario. Had that really ripped off the operator, this thing would have been like a free fall guillotine, like 260-pound door. And it just was incorrectly sprung to begin with. And we only found that through our door analysis. And so, springs are wrong. We ended up selling a spring replacement and the operator reinforcement and doing it right. Now that costs the homeowner a little bit more in the initial, but that's going to last them way longer and be way safer and more secure. And so that's the real difference. I mean, the new school, I'm not going to say it's better craftsmanship, because there's some really solid craftsmen and women on the old school frame. It's just the model of chase the builder, deliver to the homeowner, price on commodity pricing or price on value. Totally different games.
Yeah, very different businesses to run too.
Very.
Like the customer interaction is very different, but the owner's experience running that business, each business is going to be totally different.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Did you make that shift kind of like that wholesale change like all at once, or was it over a period of time that you kind of started adopting like piece by piece that new school?
It was over a period of time. I initially saw the model in 2022 and I started investing. And during that time, I just hired the best and the best to bring in operating manuals. I rebranded at that time. That's where we get this logo of today, and started investing in sales training and coaching and understanding what that process really was. It took a minute. Like, you can't just take, we weren't very big. So in theory, I could make this more effective in the future, but you still have a ship sailing in one direction. You don't just 90-degree it and go another direction. It takes a minute to make that turn and arc. And what ended up happening really for us was that we were in a market that was too small for the new school market. You need some volume, you need some homeowners. And we were in a county of 18,000 people. That just wasn't enough. Like, you could run the home service model and, have a one truck that's kind of part-time lifestyle, maybe owner operator. But to really grow, we had to get into a larger market. And that's where we ended up going two markets for a moment. Now we're just consolidated. We're still in a small market, but it's healthy to where we could run the model fully. And so it took me, roughly 4 years and a new market and a full move. And there's a lot in there to really make it happen. But I would never look back. Like, new school is the way. It's way more, I think, way more friendly, and it creates win-win-wins for everybody.
Hmm. I imagine too, it's a maybe more intellectually interesting experience for service techs too, like diagnosing problems and kind of getting to use some of your problem solving and then thinking of different solutions. Like that's probably a lot of fun versus just kind of installing the same thing, across 20 homes all at once.
I would agree with that. The piece that, I might push on is we have simplified so much the options. Like, we have menus. Really, we sell 12 things. That's it. I'm building this, to be easy to move across wherever we want to go. And so we make it simple. And what I mean by that is, for a craftsman, for a technician or installer, there's some variety. There's certainly problem solving. The solutions are packaged for the most part. Now, the intellectually really stimulating piece in my mind, and I talk about this with my team and those who want to join is in the human component. Like I will leverage technology in order to human better. And what I mean by that, there's psychology, there's leadership, there is communication. All of that stuff I geek out on and we talk about it daily. And if somebody is interested in that, we're a great place for that. It's just understanding how do we communicate better ultimately with ourselves and others. And that changes the fabric of all of life and our experiences. So it's not so much the real like problem solving. I mean, yes, we have to problem solve. And then we have packages of solutions and we have to know how to execute on those. It maybe is not as creative as like the band-aid repairs where I'm just creating something out of thin air, if you will.
Yeah, maybe a little too creative in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll use my creativity in conversation and relational leadership dynamics.
What are some principles you teach your team or coach your team on as they think about like interacting with a homeowner or a customer?
Oh my goodness. I think a big one is that we communicate for response. And so this morning, we're having a conversation and I'm encouraging them to try things. Like it takes courage, right? Like one of our core values is to improve 1% or more every day. That takes courage. We have to try new stuff. We don't learn until we do. And so, just we communicate for a response. So if I'm sharing something with you, if I'm not being attentive to you, I'm not paying attention to the response. But if I am paying attentive, then I'm watching your eyes, I'm watching your facial expressions. I might even move around and identify if there's a position that actually gets a more favorable response. And there's so many nuances in communication. So just having my guys do specific things in specific ways and then try new things and say things differently and move around differently is part of figuring it out. Like what's really going to make people respond in ways that are beneficial. How do we move somebody from state to state? A lot of times homeowners don't plan on calling Cooler Garage Doors when they wake up. Like something broke and now they have to figure it out and they're going to call Cooler. And so they call Cooler knowing that something's broke and they don't know what it is most of the time. So that individual might actually feel guarded. A guarded individual is not going to buy. And so we talk about state and outcomes, communicating for response, and then I give them tools to be able to do that. And I expect them to go experiment with those tools and see what actually fits and what it works. And these tools can get played with outside of the job, which I love thinking about because ultimately, these individuals, we have a young team of men currently. They're going to go home to their spouses, to their kids, to their significant others, and have a better way of communicating. Like, that's the gold for me. They're going to be better humans because of their time at Cooler that's going to impact their family and create ripples in our community. That's what I wake up for.
What's like one example of a maybe subtle skill improvement you've seen in communication from your techs, or one, not even like a big principle, like something small, like as a like a tactical thing that your techs now do better than they used to with either positioning or phrasing or the way they answer the phone or the way they open the door? What comes to mind?
Two things, for some of these guys, it is their confidence and presence. And some of this is really drilling into a self-value piece. And I think this is where, you know, we go back to industry disruption and you can't really talk about that without talking about the 2020 era. For garage doors to be labeled as essential services, immediately you could see some of these old garage door guys that burned out shoulders and whatnot, like stand a little taller. Be like, oh, I'm essential. Got it. And that's like a self-worth kind of deal, right? And so, some of this is just how they enter a room. Like it's subtle, but you just see these young men walking in and they're like, they own the space a little bit more. Like that's really cool. That's confidence thing. On a tactical piece, and this is really fun. Anybody can play with this today. As soon as you hear about it, it's just a powerful thing. It goes really well with storytelling, which I'm working on training our guys to do even better. Like if you tell the story of like who you are and why you're here and why you're even a part of this company, like now people start connecting to you as a human and they want to see you win. Like it's just ridiculous. But the pause is such an interesting tool and you can use it everywhere. You could use it in opening up a story. Like, let me tell you a story. And you pause and you get somebody's attention and then you can bring them somewhere. And this is all stuff I'm learning through a lot of studies with Michael Burnoff and his communication, but it's incredibly powerful. And so the pause, I would just encourage anybody to experiment with, whether you're opening up a story or you're just saying, look, let me show you this. Yeah, that's it. Like you just use a pause in there, and all of a sudden people are like, "What? You're paying attention."
Yeah. I mean, silence is uncomfortable. And if you force it, you're doing something that, is seemingly uncomfortable, but makes it look like confidence, like it sounds like confidence or an intention.
Absolutely. I mean, you can take leadership with it, and I think a nuance in there that your comment just highlights is, yeah, you do that, and you're in a specific state, and state I think of as just about everything. I mean, it's a mindset state game. And if I'm being the type of person that I need to be in order to get the type of outcome that I'm after, then I can pull that off all day long. And, I'll have the confidence, the poise to be able to carry off any good pause.
Yeah. There's got to be some interesting psychology. I've not heard of Michael Burnoff before. Is there a book that he's written that you really liked or what made a big impact on you?
Yeah, no, that guy's awesome. But his book is Average Sucks.
Average sucks.
Yep.
All right, write that down.
And he's got a number of courses, but he's a big communications guy. And, the frame of that book is not that average sucks, but your average sucks for you. My average sucks for me. Our averages might actually be different, or we might be above average if we're going to compare SAT scores or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, the thing that holds me back is the way I communicate to myself and the way I think. And so the communication zone is the gold. And most of the time, we're communicating for a response. In that frame, we understand also that we're communicating to ourselves. Anything I say, I hear. You don't always hear what I say. But if I recognize that I'm communicating for a response, that I'm recognizing I communicate for my response, and we're always communicating to that subconscious mind, which is running patterns that we don't even maybe not fully aware of.
That's pretty wild. I like the pause one. That's a good one. One thing with communication I've tried to do more is you see it a lot when you do your own podcast editing is filler words and
Yeah.
ums. It's really hard. It's really hard to cut them out entirely. But when you do your own editing and you hear your voice 5 or 6 times as you go through a recording and you see every single one of them and you're tempted to just delete every single one, it's painful. You start thinking, okay, next time I'm going to talk more cleanly, more smoothly, so I don't have to work as hard on the editing after the fact. There's things like that that I think have made a big impact for me that podcasting directly helped.
Yeah. The thing that brings up, Alex, and this is, I have to go find this clip. There is a clip of an individual that is standing at the podium and he's addressing a crowd, and the individual at the podium is actually a paid actor. The crowd is thinking that this individual is a real professional. And filler words are one thing. I'm not suggesting that filler words are really a part of this. This is just where it sparked it, because a lot of times it doesn't matter what we say. And this clip kind of proves it, because when you watch this clip, the actor is talking and he's using fancy words, but he's saying nothing. He's only saying stuff in a certain state with a certain outcome. And he gets to the end of the speech and everybody's like, "Oh man, that was great. Like, wow, that was awesome." And he didn't say anything. He's just rambling. And so, sometimes I'll go to these trainings, or I'll be training and I'll just use run-on sentences. I think there's a fine line where maybe too often people can be too concerned with being perfect, where it's more about an outcome, and the outcome doesn't care about perfection.
As you pause
As I
as
pause.
well, just to let it sink into.
Yeah. Yeah. The outcome doesn't care about perfection.
So then what does a outcome focused interaction or conversation sound like relative to striving for perfection?
It's a great question. From an observer standpoint, potentially there's not that much of a difference until one understands nuances in communication. I am working to be better at having outcomes everywhere I go. And so this morning, we run Wow Wednesdays on Wednesday morning. I've got everybody in a circle. I can see myself in the shop, and I have an outcome of delivering value that impacts them on a wow level, which is really how we communicate for response with our customers. But I don't have a lesson plan. I don't have a topic going into it. I see where they are at in their state, because if I'm communicating for response, it's what's my state, what's my outcome, what's your state, what's your outcome, and we'll go for that. And so I have this outcome of delivering some value and getting some new behaviors that are going to create wow experiences and ultimately help these guys close sales and move the business and move people's homes along. There's also an outcome for meeting in our conversation here. And my outcome is like, well, my outcome is to add as much value as possible to Alex and his listeners. In that, it's being a little bit creative and open to play and exploring where we might be able to go. And somehow we got here, and that's cool. Like some of this is a little bit of a letting go in some ways of attachment. Some of it is also just like, if I wanted to be perfect, I might slow down my communication and search for the exact right words to use all the time. And I might actually come across as stale or dry or boring. Whereas if I'm going for outcome, I might just free flow a little bit more. I might use run on sentences. I might just continue talking until something lands in response. And now I know that it's like, got it.
I like that. It frees you up a little bit. You don't feel as constrained by a whole list of things you're trying to do. It's just one thing now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Hmm. What's one thing about your business or life or craftsman that you're excited about for this year that you're looking forward to working on?
Yeah, this year I am choosing to allow really good, healthy profits. I'm excited about that, because what that requires is Matt matures as a operator, as a leader, and I don't react as much. Like, reactions are costly, and we hone the process, and we get really good at rinsing and repeating and training and recruiting. I'm really excited for that, because that also means that my guys win, our community wins. I will win. And I think the hardest part about that is allowing myself to win. There's like underlying subconscious debris that gets cleared out as I lean into that more and more.
Also takes consistency,
It
which
does.
is, that's a strong value. That's a good value.
Yeah. I have to be okay with it being boring. And it becomes like a nervous system reset in a lot of ways.
Mhm. I agree. Well, that's exciting. Matt, thank you for coming on the podcast. This has been a ton of fun. I appreciate all your time. Where can people find your show and more about you and Kooler?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, this conversation's been awesome. My podcast of Craft Your Life radio show is at craftyourlife.com. And everything Kooler is at Kooler Garage Doors. So you'll find us in all the socials with that handle of at Kooler Garage Doors. Certainly would love follows, interactions, and yeah, keep a watch on us. Last year, 2025, we were one of Colorado's finalists of Colorado companies to watch, and I think we're still worth watching.
Nice. That's exciting. Also, great domain name, craftyourlife.com. That's pretty nice. When did you buy that?
Well, I now have two of them because now I start spelling everything with a K. But I want to say, I mean, it's maybe 2-3 years ago we picked up Craft
Okay.
Your Life.
I would have thought that would have been gone decades ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think I paid maybe a couple K for it. It was not just a $12 domain name,
It was
but it
special.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't astronomical from some of the others I've seen that I've chased either. So it was right, and I'll never let go. I have a whole collection of domain names.
I heard of someone making a ton of money right before the AI craze. They went through the Fortune 500 websites and bought all of the company name .ai domains
Smart.
and then just resold them to those companies in a few months or a year later,
Yeah.
like Walmart.ai or something like that.
Yeah. That's smart.
Do extremely well. Yeah, it's pretty
I mean,
wild.
that's a whole right wave that we didn't touch on in any of our convos, but it's an AI wave is coming for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Think Like an Owner. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review and telling a friend to help more folks find Think Like an Owner. For full episode transcripts in our weekly newsletter, please visit our website at tlaopodcast.com.